Hi, this is Paul Palmer. Today I'm going to talk about remote audits, and specifically remote audits of a warehouse. Because previously I've always thought that a warehouse, you really need to get into the warehouse and have a look round and be close and in there on top of it to really get a feel for the environment that you're carrying out an audit. Now, supplier audits for approvals or maintenance, it's really important to understand what the business that you're auditing does. And with distribution, with good distribution practice, I found that a lot of the requirements focus on what's physically happening. So I was pleasantly surprised when I had a virtual tour on the phone using the camera, and it was effective. They were willing to walk wherever I wanted. They were happy to show and talk to people, give demonstrations. Even the audio was up to a standard higher than I expected. I could get the close-up on the documents, on the records, even on the screen. Okay, the screens go a bit wiggly like that, the blank parts of it when you're on a phone, but so long as you can see the data, why does it matter? So actually, I'm much more comfortable with doing good distribution practice audits than I thought I would be. Of course, the systems and the processes, you can go into a lot of detail. And I do find working remotely, I can't say why, but working remotely, I find is actually the system side of it is much, I don't know if it's less stressful, but you can go into more detail because you get the documents and you've got them on your screen. And while you're writing your report, when you actually reviewed them during the audit, you don't have to write down all the details that you need to retain for the report later when you're on site, because you can copy and paste them from the report and then they're going to be accurate. They're going to be correct. You can be sure because you've taken them from their electronic copies of their documents. So I actually like the QMS side, the pharmaceutical quality system side of remote auditing. I find it really good. And I think I mentioned that last time when I did the audit for India. I had the same experience. It was a few months back. That the actual remote audit was less stressful for the auditee, spread over time, and they found that it worked well as well. Now, in this case, the auditee wasn't as happy with the remote side of things, and it was just the personal side, because they like being near the person that they're auditing. They like to be with them. I don't think it was a problem with the actual audit or the content, but it was just empathy, probably. You're probably somebody that has more empathy when they're with the person than they do on the Zoom or the Teams or whichever system you're using. But actually now I'm quite happy doing the audits remotely just as much as on site. Now I do think, for example, an aseptic sterile manufacturing site, I wouldn't even consider doing a remote audit unless it was just a routine maintenance and you're signing off the previous actions that are quality systems verification. Actually, on-site issues or deviations, observations that you found, you're going to have to go back on site for them for aseptic sterile manufacture. Potentially terminal sterilization, you can get through the process, the system, so long as they've got some means of giving you the tour. Manufacturing in general, non-sterile, yeah, maybe, if they can give you a demo of what they do. But then, of course, you need to look at the actual cross-contamination. But then they could give you some validation reports on the cleaning and verification that they've actually done it each time. So maybe that as well. So I actually I'm comfortable doing whatever audits are needed now, which it's a good position to be in because everybody needs them done remotely at the moment. So there we go. But what I would say to anybody that's planning one, make sure you have good bandwidth on your internet. That's probably the biggest concern that I had when I've been joining, when I did the first one last year. Wasn't last year. It was during the pandemic sometime. I was concerned that we wouldn't have enough bandwidth either end, but their bandwidth was fine and so was mine. So I was happy. I could see what I needed. I got a webcam into the conference room where you would normally be sat talking to them. And that part of it was, I wouldn't say there was hardly any difference, because actually I was more organized than I would have been in the room, which maybe says something for the way that I audit in the room, because I'm focused on what I'm doing and not necessarily organizing the documents that are coming to me. Whereas when I do it remotely, I have a folder structure set out and I add the documents to the folder as they're received, continue on my agenda, and then get to the documents as part of the agenda, rather than zipping backwards and forwards when things are being received. So maybe that's a planning thing that I need to incorporate, that I've actually found is better doing a remote audit than an on-site audit. And then, of course, you have the flexibility of being able to do chunking. So when I've done some of these remote audits, you do 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, rather than having to do a full 1 day, 2 day, 3 day on-site, and everybody has to fit into that schedule when you're there. I've actually found that chunking the remote audits has worked better too. So that's it for me for today, talking about remote audits for pharmaceutical suppliers. Now, there could be GDP, there could be manufacturers, there could be components, excipients, API, whichever. I quite like doing remote audits because, of course, I can sit in my office, which is quite nice. Not that I'm saying that going to other places is bad, but I really don't like the flights. It's not my thing. When it goes over 6-8 hours, I quite like working from home. Talk to you soon. It's Paul Palmer. Ready to do your remote audits if you want me to, and whatever pharmaceutical consultancy work you need, of course.